My parents favor my sister because they believe she's the family's lucky charm. To make her happy, they forced me to donate my corneas to her. When I died in a car accident, they were celebrating my sister's regained sight. They called me a jinx and blamed misfortune on me. But when they saw my body, they cried and begged for my forgiveness. When the accident happened, I had a bit of consciousness left. I heard people around me yelling urgently, "Call 911." I had 2 emergency contacts in my phone, Mom and Dad. But the bystanders couldn't reach them. They were probably with my sister, the beloved daughter they saw as their lucky charm. The traffic during morning rush hour was bad, so the ambulance hadn't arrived yet. Finally, someone got through to my mom. "Your daughter had a car accident and might not make it. You should come right away." My consciousness was fading, and my hearing was going. But I clearly heard my mom's disgusted voice on the phone. "A car accident? What's Candy up to now? Enough with these stunts. Trying to get attention like that. Disgusting." Before the caller could react, my mom bluntly said, "If she wants to die, she better do it fast. Don't spoil Clara's recovery day, what a jinx." By then, I'd lost all feeling due to heavy bleeding, but her words pierced my heart harder than the car that hit me. I lost consciousness before the ambulance arrived, and that was how I died on a rainy, muddy street. Maybe I held on too tightly to the past, because my spirit ended up with my parents. They were with a very happy Clara, aka my sister. She playfully threw herself into Mom's arms, gushing, "Mom, I can finally see you with both eyes again." Dad affectionately ruffled her hair, his face full of love. Their joy hurt to watch. Clara had just had the stitches removed from the cornea transplant, done by Dad, a top-notch eye surgeon. And the donor cornea? That was mine. Dad, known as a prodigy in ophthalmology, had done thousands of surgeries. But before this one, he was still nervously praying while holding Clara. I was just sitting there watching on a nearby bed. Love and favoritism were crystal clear. Clara brought up the earlier phone call. "What happened to Candy?" Mom didn't explain before Dad interrupted. "Don't worry about her. She's just pulling stunts to gain sympathy. It's enough already. I'm their daughter too. Why does it seem like their anger always points at me? Even in death, I doubt they'd shed a tear for me." As they chatted warmly, Mom suddenly mentioned, "It's lucky we have the jinx. Otherwise, what would we have done about your eyes?" A month earlier, Clara injured her right eye. Her cornea ulcerated, and she needed a transplant. But the hospital ran short on donors and hadn't found a match after a week. Clara tearfully asked why she couldn't see yet, insisting it wasn't fair that she was becoming blind. Her words turned all attention towards me. Dad immediately checked if I was a match, and I was. He glanced at me with clear disapproval. "Why would Clara want your corneas? Clara was always pampered as the family's lucky star." The day she was born, my mom's company landed a big deal, dodging bankruptcy. The next day, Dad got promoted to department chief. Mom is superstitious and consults feng shui experts regularly. One said Clara was a blessing from above, and my parents latched onto it. She got everything she wanted, even if it meant taking my corneas. But I refused. When Mom found out, she freaked out and hit me. "How dare you refuse? It's your fault Clara's blind. Why wasn't it you instead of her?" I felt her fists and the sting of a ring slicing into my chest, making me bleed. It hurt so much. When Clara injured her eye, she was with me. She was playing with shards of glass, trying to hurt my eyes just because they looked like hers. I pushed her away, and she fell on broken glass. Her cries brought our parents running. They looked at me with disdain. No, she was trying to hurt my eyes. I didn't finish before Dad kicked me into the glass shards. "Trying to kill your sister, huh? How could you be so evil?" In pain, I crumpled to the floor, watching them rush to Clara. Mom cast one last hateful glance at me. "You should die. Why don't you just die? Now I'm dead. I hope they're satisfied." I disappeared from home for a couple of weeks after that, but my parents didn't seem to care. Mom even sneered in my empty room, pretending to be dead to get attention. Pathetic. Dad chimed in. "Won't even donate one cornea to Clara. Such a waste of raising her." Their words stung. I was tired of their favoritism and resisted the transplant, even threatening to jump off the hospital roof. But they just stood by with Clara, sure I wouldn't go through with it. Candy, you won't dare. Do it. After we raised you with such effort, this is how you repay us? Clara's your sister, your little sis. Can't you, as the older sibling, help her out? Do you really have to be so selfish? Figures you'd be such a jinx. I watched as Clara stood behind our parents, mouthing "go to hell" over and over. And there my parents stood, constantly siding with her. My heart sank with despair. I used to be genuinely happy when Clara was born, even though she got labeled as the lucky one and stole all my parents' attention. Until that one slap. When I was 3, Mom handed Clara to me with a smile, wanting me to hold her. I almost dropped her. Mom immediately hit me hard across the face while comforting my crying sister. How can you be so clumsy? What if you dropped your sister? I just held my cheek and cried softly, but Mom just shot me a disgusted look. Such a jinx. Clara was the lucky star. And I was obviously nothing but a jinx to them. To me, Clara was just bad news from the start. Even with all the love from our parents, she was never satisfied. She loved taking everything from me, always with ease. Whether it was something small like toys and hobbies, or big like a lover or inheritance. If Clara wanted it, our parents made sure I handed it over. I'd scream at them. Are you really trying to drive me to my death? Dad grabbed me just in time as I was about to leap from the rooftop, with a hidden hope swelling inside me. Maybe, just maybe, they still loved me. That thought was erased when Mom slapped me again. Don't be a drama queen. You're causing a scene at your dad's hospital. And then, you'd better donate your corneas to Clara. They pushed me onto the operating table, and I watched from above as they laughed and chatted. My heart ached. I was supposed to be dead, so why did it still hurt so much? In the midst of it all, my teacher once called my dad. I'd been absent for 2 weeks, and the teacher worried something was wrong. Dad brushed it off. Don't worry, she'll come back when she realizes she's wrong. My teacher didn't really understand, but still mentioned the art contest I had entered. Your daughter Candy got into the state competition. You'll need to submit some documents. When can you come to the school? Dad looked surprised. State competition? Clara heard it too and her face twisted. She ran to her room and came back in tears, with a poorly drawn fireworks painting. Dad, I never said anything, but my sister copied my work. What? How can that be? Dad angrily asked my teacher what I had painted. Fireworks was the answer. He saw Clara's drawing and bought into her story. Teacher, withdraw Candy's entry. Copies shouldn't win. She's not worthy. I tried to stop Dad but slipped through his body. I could only watch as they canceled my chance and labeled me a cheater. But I didn't. Clara set me up. She had falsely accused me countless times, and they always believed her. The worst was when she claimed I hit her while they were out. She showed them some faint red marks she had easily scratched herself. Even though it was obvious, they believed her. Dad used his right hand to slap me hard. The ringing in my ears was unbearable. Dad, the doctor who valued his hands so much, hit me just for Clara. Candy, how could you be so vicious to your sister? Are you even human? Holding back dizziness, I pulled up my sleeve to reveal the fresh cuts Clara had made on my arm, just to see me bleed and cry. Mom sneered at my arm. What are you up to now, Candy? You think cutting yourself would frame Clara? Disgusting. Protected by them. Clara first panicked when her deed was exposed, but calmed upon hearing my mom's words. Her eyes challenged me, as if to say, see? No matter what, they're on my side. That slap nearly deafened me, and I wished it had. That way, I wouldn't hear their scolding. Now I float above, watching them laugh in the living room. Until a call shattered the moment. My body had been in the morgue for 2 weeks. They couldn't let it stay there any longer. They'd called my parents repeatedly, their numbers blocked. Are you Candy's parents? She's been dead 2 weeks. Why haven't you come for her? Mom yelled into the phone. How much did Candy pay you to keep this act up? Tell her, go home or not, we don't need her. I scoffed at them. Of course, they didn't need me. I was extra baggage. The nurse finally lost patience and raised her voice. That's your daughter. What kind of parents are you? Mom hung up, puzzled and a little shaken. Candy couldn't really be in trouble, could she? Dad frowned. No way, she's used that trick how many times? Always fighting with Clara for attention. Mom regained confidence. Yeah, I'll just go to that hospital and see what game Candy's playing. Yet there's no more game to be played. I've been dead 2 weeks. Mom drove alone to the hospital. A nurse led her to the morgue. You guys sure put on a convincing act. Even going as far as setting up a morgue? Even though it had come to this, she still didn't believe I was actually dead. It wasn't until the nurse pulled back the white sheet covering me, revealing my blue and purple face. My right eye had shrunk due to poor treatment after surgery. Honestly, it's not a pretty sight. My mom was so shocked she stepped back a few paces, shaking her head in disbelief. Impossible. How could she really be dead? It's a trick. It must be a trick. I floated above, watching her. No, it's not a trick, I'm really dead. She rushed up, pulling back the sheet covering my body, revealing the longevity lock around my neck. It was like all the strength drained from her, and she collapsed to the floor. How could this be? No, Candy, wake up and see your mom. When I was a year old, my mom went to a temple to pray for me and had a longevity lock made. There, my parents had inscribed something on the back of it. It said, "Sweet Candy, Mom and Dad love you. May you live a long life." I treasured that lock, never even taking it off to shower. But my dad pulled it right off my neck. He said, "Candy, your little sister is still young. Let her have it. It's just a longevity lock. We'll get you a new one later." But I never got a new one. Before I was wheeled into the operating room, I asked my parents for my lock back. They hesitated, and Clara just tossed the longevity lock onto my chest like it was trash. This broken thing? Who wants it? But I wanted it. I held it tight during the surgery. While I was under, I thought about when my mom first put that lock on me. She said, "Mommy hopes my sweet Candy will always be healthy and have a long life." I looked at the woman kneeling on the ground, crying loudly, feeling numb inside. "Mom, I didn't live a long life. I died at 18. My mom returned home red-eyed, deeply saddened. My dad watched her hollowed-out look, trying to support her. "What's wrong? Did Candy upset you again?" My mom, with a hoarse voice, shouted, "Enough. Candy is your daughter too. Why treat her like that?" I watched her shove my dad hard, mixed emotions inside. "Mom, so you knew I was your daughter too? Candy's really gone. How can she be dead?" My dad's face turned ghostly pale, disbelief etched in every word. "How? What nonsense are you talking about? No way. That can't be true." But it was true. Looking at them holding each other and weeping, I found it almost comical. Before I died, I was someone they despised, and now suddenly they cared. The next day, my mom got a phone call. "Hello, is this Candy's parent? Candy hasn't come for her follow-up. Is there an issue?" Mom froze. "Follow-up? What's wrong with Candy?" "Depression. She's been treated here for 5 years." Mom stood dumbstruck, dropping the phone from her hand. I had depression for 5 years. But in those 7 years, my parents hadn't noticed a thing. I went to that clinic the first time at age 13. The doctor asked why I was there without my parents. I lowered my head and said calmly, "My parents don't love me." Back then it was mild depression. 7 years of treatment turned into severe depression. When the doctor learned of my passing from my mom, he sighed heavily. This child has finally taken that path. Mom, eyes red, voice trembling. "What do you mean?" During therapy, the child always showed suicidal tendencies. I tried so hard to persuade them. Mom finally broke down. "Candy, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, it's all my fault. I used to dream countless times that my parents would apologize to me. In the dream, I forgave them and hugged them, laughing together. But I'm dead now, and no amount of apology means anything." I just quietly watched my mom's tears, feeling nothing inside. Returning home, Mom confronted Clara. "Clara, did your sister really bully you often and take your things?" Before leaving the hospital, the doctor asked my mom a question. "In the 7 years of treating Candy, I noticed your younger daughter bullied her. Did you not notice?" My mom instinctively denied it. "Impossible. Clara is the sweetest child." Long-standing favoritism had her convinced that Clara was the good kid. Hearing this, Clara looked nervous. "Mom, what are you implying? You think I'm lying?" Dad looked disapprovingly at Mom. "How could you doubt Clara? She's a good child." But when he went through my records, his expression darkened. Clara, sensing severity, started crying first. "Mom, Dad, why don't you believe me? Do you really see me as this bad kid? If you don't believe me, I might as well die too." Her tears were pitiful, quickly drawing my parents to console her. Just like that, Clara used tears to easily dissolve the doubt. And there I was abandoned again. Before my cremation, Clara looked at my bruised body, sneering so ugly. For the first time, Mom snapped at her, "Enough. Clara, she's your sister." Clara, noticing Mom's upset face, fell silent. The cremation turned me into a box of ashes. Clara, of her own accord, took the urn but accidentally dropped it on the way. The box fell, scattering most of the ashes into muddy water. My parents, looking grim and somewhat angry, glanced at Clara. Clara's expression changed from smug to pitiful. "Mom, Dad, I'm sorry. I am just too sad. I couldn't hold on to her ashes. I'm sorry, so sorry." Her voice quivered, standing clumsily near the spilled ashes. My parents couldn't bring themselves to scold her. They just gently comforted her, telling her it was all right. My mom even brushed off the ashes that had stuck to her pants. Meanwhile, some of my ashes were still soaking in the muddy water. I watched as they surrounded Clara, and something inside me just died. Maybe I should have never had any expectations of this family love. Eventually, my dad gathered my ashes from the ground, mixing in some dirt, and put it all in a box. When we got home, he just casually tossed my ash box into my room. "Trash. That's all you're fit to be mixed with dirt." That evening, my parents were looking through our photo album. Ever since Clara was born, there were hardly any pictures of me in it. My mom placed her hand over the photo of my young face, looking sad. My dad held her and sounded guilty. "We can't change the past. Now that Candy's gone, we can't fix our favoritism. At least we still have our lucky star, Clara." Turns out they knew how biased they were, yet did nothing to change it. 2 days later, my parents held my funeral. Along with relatives, many of my parents' colleagues attended. The relatives adored Clara, endlessly praising her as a lucky charm. With them there, my funeral turned into a bustling event. One of my mom's business partners chuckled nearby. "Lucky star? That's funny. Haven't you all heard? That so-called master is a fraud, making it all up." Silence fell over the funeral after his words. Watching the frozen expressions on my parents' faces, I laughed silently. How did they just realize it now? That master they relied on was invited to our house every year to check the feng shui. He'd always say Clara was the lucky star. Clara got lots of attention from relatives and my parents because of it. And my parents' careers kept flourishing, so they believed it completely. But 2 years ago, I saw Clara slip money to that master. I took a picture of it and went to tell my parents. When they confronted Clara and the master, Clara exchanged a secret glance with him. She looked innocently at us. "Mom, Dad, I just wanted the master to tweak the feng shui for our family. I was doing it for us." The master accused me, his voice full of resentment. "I kept quiet before for your family's harmony. This child is a jinx. If Clara hadn't been suppressing that, your family would have faced big trouble." I held up the photo in my hand, desperately trying to convince my parents. But they, as always, sided with my sister, even looking at me with anger. "Of course you're the jinx." No one believed me. And now, the truth is right in front of everyone. My parents looked pale, faces filled with disbelief. How can it be? That partner, seeing they weren't convinced, spilled more insider details. "Don't doubt it. This master checks feng shui in wealthy homes, collecting money everywhere. They just got caught because a maid convinced him to claim her as the main mistress." He was intrigued, but our family's faces grew even paler. My dad glanced at Clara's nervous demeanor, speaking in a voice barely above a whisper. "Clara, what did you really?" Clara suddenly burst out shouting, "No, I didn't. Dad, how can you doubt me?" My mom grabbed Clara and went to find that master. The supposed master saw Clara and realized things had gone wrong. "I'm sorry. Your daughter offered too much." Clara tried to silence the master by choking him, but my mom slapped her away. "Clara, how could you do that to your sister? How could you?" My mom threw herself at Clara, using all her strength to pound her, just like she used to do to me. Finally, my mom collapsed to the ground, crying uncontrollably. When my dad helped her back home, she stumbled into my room. She found the ash box tossed under my bed and carefully wiped away the dust. Inside, my ashes were still mixed with the dirty water. My mom knelt on the ground, trying to separate the filth, endlessly apologizing. I'm sorry, Candy, I was wrong. Her tears fell onto my ashes, making the grayish-black mix even murkier. I instinctively wanted to catch her tears. Not from pity, but disgust. I can't forgive them. Their favoritism scarred me for years. A few sorries can't fix that. Such parents I don't need. My mom investigated the cause of my death and found the intersection footage. On the footage, I staggered onto the crosswalk during a red light, struck by a car that couldn't stop. Watching the footage, my mom covered her mouth as tears streamed down. My dad trembled uncontrollably beside her, clutching the tablet she held, before collapsing on his knees. Candy, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have pushed for that surgery. I've harmed you, we've harmed you. After my cornea transplant, they turned their attention to Clara. Meanwhile, they hardly gave me a thought. Neglecting my postoperative care led to an infection that hurt my optic nerve. I mistook red lights for green, causing the accident. As a doctor, Dad figured it out from the video alone. He knelt, harshly smacking his face, repeating words of remorse. But it's useless now. I'm already gone. News of my death spread, and many expressed sympathy. Even my ex sought out my mom. Auntie, I just heard about Candy's passing. My condolences. But Candy was distressed from mental illness. I hope she's at peace now. My mom frowned and replied, what mental illness? Candy has a mental illness, right? Clara told me so. When I was 17, Clara found my medical records. I tried to grab them back, but she kicked me to the ground. Looking at the document, Clara gave a nasty smile. Depression? I think you're just crazy. Whenever Mom and Dad weren't around, she'd call me a nutcase. On my anniversary with my boyfriend, she approached him. She made up lies about me being a psycho, which scared him away. Then she used sweet talk to make my boyfriend hers, and showed him off in front of me. Crazy girl, you don't deserve love. Don't deserve love became like a curse, deepening my emotional scar. Dad slapped Clara hard. Clara, you wicked person. How could you say that about your sister? Mom looked at her with sorrow, but Clara didn't back down. And what about you guys? He's my sister. Isn't she your daughter too? Why blame me for everything? All her fakes were stripped away, and my parents finally saw how vile she was. So when Clara's teacher called, my mom didn't clean up her mess. Mrs. Clara's been involved in some serious bullying at school. We need you to come in. Mom's voice was icy. We'll compensate the victims, but as for Clara, whether it's punishment or expulsion, we'll accept it. As soon as she said that, Clara yelled, Mom, how can you do this to me? Finally, her parents gave up on her too. Before, Clara bullied others at school, but Mom covered it up with money. Clara always turned things around, making herself look innocent. But not this time. Mom saw the proof of her bullying own sister. Such a person couldn't be a good kid, right? Clara was expelled. For someone spoiled, it was humiliating. Mom, I'm your daughter. Just help me this once, please. Mom looked at her coldly. Clara, you deserve this. You caused your sister so much pain. This is your karma. They had a huge fight, turning this once loving mother-daughter duo into enemies. They say bad people get what's coming to them. That's them. The home's atmosphere turned sour. Clara didn't come home. Instead hung out with troublemakers. Missing out took a toll on Mom. Her mind wandered a lot recently. She missed an important detail in a document, signed off on it, and it led to a huge company loss. This hit harder than the crisis before Clara was born. Mom was overwhelmed. Then my art entry was returned by the teacher. I drew vibrant fireworks. At the bottom were 3 silhouettes, 2 big, 1 small. The little one seemed just 4 or 5. It captured my 4th birthday memory, when Mom and Dad took me to see fireworks. They promised to take me every year after. I believed them. But once Clara was born, we never saw fireworks again. Mom could tell what the painting was. Her hands shook touching the dried paint. Didn't even notice her hands were dirty. Candy, Candy, she repeated like endless regret. I stood by, watching her despair. I hoped to share our happy memories with that painting for the contest. But now happiness was gone. I resented and blamed them. Dad suddenly burst in, banging on Clara's door. Get out here, Clara. What did you do? Not knowing what was happening, Clara came out and was slapped by Dad. You're the jinx. What the hell did you do? Clara was clueless, but I knew. Today my dad's hospital got an anonymous complaint. It accused him of skipping procedures and ignoring donor consent for a live cornea transplant. I reported it. My psychologist mailed the letter. Before the cornea transplant, I went through therapy. The therapist advised me not to bottle up my pain and to push back. I wrote a letter and gave it to her to send to my dad's hospital a month later. Clara had been rushing for surgery, making dad skip procedures. I intended to correct my parents' unfairness during that month. But I never made it. I watched coldly as dad hit her. Clara, hanging with thugs lately, grew volatile. She pushed dad away and spat. "Don't freak out. It was you who messed up and killed my sister, planning to kill me?" Dad, furious, tried to punch her, but Clara dodged. His fist hit the iron rack hard. Blood oozed from his hand, and the rack fell on it. "My hand! Oh, my hand!" Dad yelled in pain, looking at his bloody hand. His once precious little daughter was frightened, watching him fall, and ran away panicked. Dad, who was the gem of the ophthalmology world, was done. He wouldn't be able to perform surgeries again. With the recent complaints, the hospital decided to fire him. The day my dad left the hospital, my mom's company went through bankruptcy liquidation. Everything they gained overnight was now gone. Overnight, they seemed 20 years older, with countless gray hairs. My dad sat on the couch, holding his head in despair. We were wrong, we were all wrong. It was Clara who's the jinx. Wrong, we had been wrong for over a decade. Yet, my mom kept holding my photo, repeating, "Candy, Mom was wrong." She ignored my dad completely. Gradually, he noticed something was off. He got closer to her and saw her unfocused eyes, her frozen expression. My mom had gone mad. She turned into a woman who could only say, "Min, I was wrong." When my dad found Clara, her eyes were already blind. The parent of the bullied student was unhappy with the school's actions and threw strong acid in her eyes. By the time they found her, it was too late. Her eyes were totally damaged, no chance of recovery. She lay in the hospital bed, crying out, "No way, my eyes. How can I be blind again? Dad, go find me a suitable cornea. I can't be blind." My dad ignored her cries, just pulling a bitter smile. In our home now, there was a blind person, a mad person, and a man who was continuously tormented. Because Clara was blind, she was uselessly furious every day. My mom always held something related to me, mumbling my name daily. A week later, it was my birthday. My mom held an urn and was brought by my dad to my grave. They bought me a cake and lit candles at my grave, but the candles were extinguished by the wind before they could burn. My dad, his hair gray, spoke painfully. "Candy, won't you forgive Mom and Dad?" I stood beside him, nodding firmly. I refused. Before heading home, my mom insisted on buying fireworks. My dad couldn't win against her. She came back home, smiling, carrying a bag of fireworks. I didn't understand what she was up to until I saw her take out my drawing. On the back, I had written a little note. "I want to watch fireworks with Mom and Dad." But I was already dead. How could I watch fireworks? My mom brought the fireworks into the kitchen, turned on the gas, and lit a flame. She slowly burned the fireworks, even when sparks hit her hand. She clutched the burning fireworks, walked into the living room, and threw them into every corner. "Candy, let's watch fireworks with Mom." Sparks from the fireworks ignited the fabric sofa, next to my dad's unfinished bottle of liquor. The fire grew larger, and my dad rushed out of the room, trying to drag my mom and Clara out. But my mom held him down with all her strength. "We'll stay to watch fireworks with Candy." In the end, they both fainted due to smoke inhalation. Clara, who was blind, couldn't find an exit, and was hit by a burning wooden shelf, never getting up again. My drawing was gradually burned to ashes in the fire. And miraculously, my mom's transparent body appeared in front of me. She was excited, trying to hug me, but I dodged her. "Candy, Mom was wrong. I punished the bad guys for you. Forgive Mom, okay? We can watch lots of fireworks together." "But Mom, you're a bad person too." I looked at my increasingly transparent body and smiled at her. "I like fireworks, but next time, I want to see them by myself. In my next life, I hope for a family that never shows favoritism." The end.